everyone, and welcome to the Omega Metroid Podcast. My name is Andy Spiteri, joined as always by Dakota Lasky. This is the first episode post Metroid Dread. I feel like we just got to take a moment to soak it in. When we started this podcast, there was no Metroid Dread. There is no Metroid anything except for Metroid Prime 4, which just got delayed. So, wow, what a ride that this podcast has been on, and what a journey we have been on to finally get to Metroid Dread. Dak, you and I were both playing all weekend. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great, dude. It is, I feel like we almost got to go back and do like a revised history of Metroid Dread now that we know the full truth. We know what's happened. Well, I guess until we find out the actual development of this final version of the game, maybe we can do that. But yeah, we actually have the final game, which is crazy. I actually still have to finish it. I know you have, but I have to finish it. I'll be finishing it tonight, likely before this episode comes out, but after we're recording it. It's crazy that we have a new Metroid game. And that Dread is out because it just got like announced earlier this year, and now we're playing it, and I don't know. It's awesome. I love the game, and I can't wait to get back at it because I actually haven't played in a day or so because I was out for the weekend. So I actually haven't been playing all weekend. I wanted to. I played on Friday and Saturday. I played as much as I could, and then I wanted to finish the game, but I was away for the past day or so, and I'm like, I want to finish the game on stream. I've played my first playthrough on stream, so I want to finish it on stream, so I can't wait to finish the game. I'm really excited, and I can't wait. This game's awesome. Very excited.
It is awesome, which is really like, it's like a sigh of relief. I mean, we thought it would be awesome. It looked awesome, but to know that it actually is awesome, it's like, okay, great. This is like, everything is right in the world right now. We've got Metroid Dread, and what a journey I feel like you and I have been on since starting this podcast and getting to this day where finally we're gonna talk about the new 2D Metroid game that was like been rumored for absolutely forever. So very cool stuff. Before we get going, I've got two quick things that I want to give a shout out to. First of all, if you do not have, I'm going to take that back. I feel like everyone listening to this podcast probably bought Metroid Dread. But if you are so inclined, you can head over to the Omega Metroid Podcast Twitter at Omega Metroid Pod. Go and enter our sweepstakes to win yourself a copy of Metroid Dread. Literally, all you have to do is follow the podcast and retweet the pinned tweet on our channel. And if you win a copy of Metroid Dread, give it to someone that's never played Metroid. Give it to someone that maybe is on the fence about Metroid Dread, and spread that Metroid word. Spread the love, and pay it forward. So go and tell your pals, anyone that's interested in winning a copy of Metroid Dread. That's over on the official Metroid or Omega Metroid podcast Twitter feed. And if you are also so inclined, over on the Zelda side of my podcast, I actually had my Zelda co-host Allison play Super Metroid for the first time. So we just did like an hour and a half show about Super Metroid on the Zelda podcast. Wow. So it was a pretty cool episode, actually. It was kind of weird to hear, like, I take that game for granted, and like things that I just know. Allison was like, well, I had no idea that you had to or like what blocks equated to what power-ups to break and stuff like that. So it was just a fascinating listen, actually, I think. And we talked about the baby Metroid because she has a big thing for Baby Yoda and baby things. So she was pretty distraught, let's just say.
Oh no! Well, don't tell her what happens in Other M.
Yeah. That's over on the Champions Cast. If anyone wants to check that out, maybe we'll release that sometime down the future. It's just like a bonus episode some week. But yeah, it was very interesting to hear her thoughts. But now it is time for our thoughts.
Yes.
On Metroid Dread. And
wow, what a game!
Maybe we should just wow. Yeah, I mean, really, like, wow. Let's lay down a few not ground rules, but let's just kind of segment what we're going to talk about. So we're gonna call this our impressions of Metroid Dread. Dak hasn't finished the whole game.
Yeah, first impression.
Even if he had, we're gonna save our thoughts on the story for next week. So this is going to be an episode strictly on kind of like how the game functions in terms of like the controls, areas, maps, difficulty, etc., etc. We're gonna maybe slightly touch on the music, but that is also going to be in a future episode dedicated unto itself. And we'll get really in depth into the bosses in a future episode as we have Mapping Metroid making its return. And I think that we decided on Arteria as our first Metroid Dread area. So tons of Dread content that is going to be coming down the pipe. But for now, early initial impressions, and I mean, it doesn't really get more initial or early than this, but like, this game is awesome. I think so. I finished it. I 100%ed it. I'm replaying it right now. This game is awesome. Like, I think you could make a legitimate case that this is the best 2D Metroid. You could make a legitimate case that this might just be the best Metroid, like, period.
Yeah.
And your mileage may vary if you know, depending on if you're a fan of the Prime style or 2D style. But I think that, like, there is so much right about this game that it's absolutely crazy, and it's such a relief because this is going to be so many people's first entry into Metroid, to, you know, playing Metroid for the first time. So this game is awesome, and it is you know, it's everything that I wanted from a new 2D Metroid game.
Yeah, no, this game is definitely firing on all cylinders. I will say that it has hit most of my expectations, so I'm very happy about that. And yeah, I could say at this point it is. I mean, I'm gonna reserve my entire judgment for when I finish the game, but at the moment, from what I've played, it definitely has a case for best 2D Metroid for sure. The game is really awesome. I'm really glad that, you know, it went in the direction it did. It was trying to, you know, make the game feel a little more faster, a little more opened up for a 2D Metroid game, a little more streamlined, which made it really fun. I love like the new art style and graphic style they kind of went with, which really made it feel like the right kind of cinematic. So like how it's like the cinematics are integrated to the actual gameplay and the transitions between those, like that's really how it should be done in a Metroid game. So I love the presentation, love the gameplay, hits most of my expectations, and made me want to keep playing more, which is always a good sign. So yeah, I'm very happily satisfied with the game so far.
Yeah, I agree, and there certainly are some things that I would nitpick about the game there, and there's some things that I wish would have been improved, or just other things. So
that's
like,
any game.
I'm not. Yeah, which is any game, and we'll talk about some of that stuff. But I mean, the overall whole package is just like, God, it's really awesome. And now I got to go and find I saw that you had no less than three collector editions. So I got to go find a frame for those 5 cards that came with it for all the 2D Metroid stuff. So I want to get that frame somewhere and up, looking real snazzy. But yeah, this is it really is a fantastic 2D game. Anyone that's played Samus Returns is going to feel right at home. So I guess maybe let's just talk about the way that the game controls and stuff like that. Because one of the obvious things when you were looking at the trailers for this game is that momentum and movement was going to be a big factor, and it really does feel like it's a fast-paced game, and to see some of the speedrunners and sequence breakers already just like going crazy with Dread is pretty nuts. But even for a guy like me, like I'm not good at Metroid games, but like I'm moving really efficiently, I'm sliding under stuff, particularly later when you get the speed booster and you could do like wall jumping, which also feels very easy, by the way, but you could do wall jumping and sliding, and just it feels really nice to control. I will say that I was anticipating the other joystick being used for something, and they didn't really use it for anything in particular. In fact, I don't think they used it at all. But for the most part, I think that it is like very fluid. Obviously, you know, it's the same engine as Samus Returns, where you've got the free aiming and you've got you know, that ability to use missiles and stuff like that. But they definitely do take advantage of all of the different buttons available on the Switch. So yeah, I think like just in general, it controls really well, feels really fluid, and you have like a ton of different like options. Like you've got the Phantom Cloak assigned to one button, you've got the Speed Boost assigned to another button, missiles are one, free aim is one. So it's there's a lot of like different button mapping. But for myself, I always felt like I was like pretty in control, pretty fluent with all the different configurations and stuff. So simply moving around and firing and what all felt really nice.
I would say this game probably feels like controls the best out of any 2D Metroid game. Like bar none, it feels awesome. It takes a little bit to get used to like certain aspects of the controls. I think like having the grapple hook on like my right trigger. I think it is like that was kind of weird when I think it's usually on like the left trigger or whatever in older games. Um, Stuff like that was kind of weird. And then, but like I love the Phantom Cloak like being like the right stick input or left stick input, like just the actual like click in. Having
Mm-hmm.
your own button for other stuff. Yeah, I think it was really good. Just a little bit of like it was a little bit to get used to at first because some of the controls are slightly different from previous 2D Metroid games. Once you kind of really figure it out and you're moving around a lot and you kind of like actively think in your head like what the button combinations are, it's definitely a lot easier and it feels. And once you start like feeling really comfortable with the controls, then the game really opens up and like I'm flying around, I'm flash shifting in the air and melee air countering enemies and jumping around, sliding. Like it feels awesome when, especially as you get more and more of the abilities in the game. But even at like a fundamental level, the game controls as we expected it to, which is like just really awesome and sick. And I don't know, I love how they've incorporated the new aspects of the controls and mechanics, but it still feels very Metroid. It feels very natural. The things that they've added. So yeah, I think like once you kind of get over that initial how like slight differences in the controls for a 2D Metroid, it feels really good.
I agree. One thing that that took me a second to get used to was actually the map, and I've said forever here, like one of the key aspects of a good Metroidvania is you got to have a good map, and I think that Dread does have a really good map, but it's very like it's very different. It reminds me more of like a Metroid Prime style map than like your typical 2D map because like in Super and Fusion and Zero Mission and stuff, it's very like squared off. Like there's no round edges or anything like that. Whereas this map is very like kind of free flowing. You could see the shape of the rooms that you're in, and your map adjusts accordingly. And the rooms are all color coded too. So like your purple room is your transport room, your yellow rooms are your save rooms, which actually I think is like kind of a cool little tidbit to add. But it did get me a little bit of, or it took me a little bit of time to like kind of get used to that and kind of unlearn what I had learned in previous 2D Metroid games. Um, I love the part where like the map will flash if there is a secret to be found because it's a little bit in kind of keeping with the fact that it's not like as square as the Fusion map or the Zero Mission map or whatever. There in those games you'd have like the little circle that would tell you that there is a secret hidden there. Whereas this game, because it's not so squared off or whatever, the secret or the item could really be anywhere. So I like that it just kind of told you the general vicinity of where that happened to be rather than like it's on this particular square on the map. So I actually really like that new feature. I didn't necessarily love, however, how you could only highlight, like if you're looking for missiles or whatever, you can go and highlight a missile, but you have to find it on the map first to highlight it. I wish that there would have been like a legend or something like that where you could just scroll down and see like missiles, power bomb expansions, blah blah blah, and just select that so it would show you all of those available in like the current map that you're in. I could actually see that getting patched in maybe a next update or two, but yeah, for the most part, other than that one little thing, I really loved the map in this game and how like modern and fresh it seemed.
Yeah, I would say a filter like that would be cool. And I was talking to someone, I forget who it was, on the stream that when I was playing the game previously, and I was talking about how I definitely like the new map where it's conformed to the actual shape of the rooms and not just blocks, which would make it feel so kind of archaic and old. And it definitely needed that kind of modern update. I love the interconnectivity of the map where you have like the different shuttles, but then the teleporters as well and the elevators. So there's all different kinds of ways to get from, one area to the next or to another area. There's even multiple ways to get between two areas. So there's a lot of different interconnectivity, and part of the game, the exploration of the game is figuring out like a quicker way to get to an area. Because I remember there were a couple of times where I was like, oh, I got to go all the way around. Then I actually figured out the right way to go, and it was a quicker way to access a teleporter or an elevator or something, and that was helpful. So yeah, I personally like the map. It definitely had that Metroid Prime feel to it in terms of like how it's built, the interconnectivity, how it confirms to the actual rooms, and yeah, that little like I guess highlight. I honestly at first I was like, why is my map blinking here? Like I didn't understand, and I was just like, what is going on? I finally figured it out later. Yeah, there's a lot more utility in this map. Feels a lot more updated, streamlined. I like that. I kind of use the place markers here and there. Eventually, I would start to use them like later in the game where I was, trying to keep track of stuff. But you get to a certain point in the game where you remember, like, all right, there's a specific place I know I gotta go after I get this next upgrade, and then you get the upgrade, you head back there. So I didn't really need the markers as much as I maybe anticipated I would. But I mean, the size of these maps are really big too. Like at times, it felt like these areas felt pretty large. Maybe that was just maybe they're not as large as they could be because maybe I could be moving through them a little more optimally using like Samus's abilities like the flash shift and whatnot and slides and speed boosters. But they did feel pretty big, especially earlier in the mid part of the game. So yeah, I like the map. I like the areas. I think it was overall a really solid, I guess, integration of previous elements of the map and then kind of new enhancements that they've introduced in this game.
Yeah, and like you're right, man. The areas are massive.
Yeah.
And actually, there's more areas than I thought there was too. There's a couple extra areas that I don't think were in the Dread report, so that was very cool. But yeah, just talking about the areas for a second here, I really actually quite like the different areas in here, and we kind of got a glimpse of them in the Dread report, but like really kind of sinking your teeth into the specific areas. I feel like Arteria was like a very like just a really great kind of start off point for this game to have, and just kind of themed in that way that like it kind of reminded me of Criteria, but also it kind of has that like sleek ship feel in the EMMI zone, particularly from like Metroid Fusion. So I was really down with Arteria. I think that Kataris has that like obviously that Norfair kind of vibe where you've got all the cool magma going on. And like, there's so much good stuff happening in the backgrounds of all of this that it's we could sit here all day and just point out like the little cool features and stuff. But each kind of area had their own like I don't know like feature or whatever that really stood out and made them unique. I think that these are going to be something as we play more that like we're gonna look back and say like the areas of Metroid Dread were like really really awesome. And actually, when I was playing, and I was just like, man, there's a lot of areas. I actually kind of had a flashback to Axiom Verge, which also has a lot of areas. And I was thinking like, yeah, but those areas all like really kind of look the same. Whereas like in Dread, like each area has like an identity. Like Barinia's the water area and like I can't remember the name of the forest area, but like there's the underground forest, and you've got Dairon, which is like almost like the haunted area at the beginning when it has no power. And then it shifts into this like big industrial complex. Like each one has their own vibe to it, and I think that they, like you said, they kind of interconnect in a way that I was really hoping that they would. Being that this was a sequel to Fusion, you were kind of limited in that game with how the areas interconnected based on kind of the, I guess, the drawing of like the BSL in real time.
Yeah.
So you had almost two sectors that would connect to each other, and that was it. I love that like this area interconnects in that way, and there's the teleporters too that like they interconnect without literally having you like take an elevator to it. But like if you have a yellow teleporter in one area and you have like a yellow teleporter in the complete opposite area, if you take that, you're probably going to find like a secret or a vital power up. I thought it was just like really well done.
Yeah, my thing is that I'm half and half on the Dread locations because I think they are really good. Like when you're inside those actual areas and you're in, the water area and Arteria and all these different places, like the backgrounds are beautiful and you have these really cool environments with depth and like these little animated like creatures in the background moving around and whatnot. It looks great. Like the lighting effects are awesome when you get into the later areas, and it's a bit more like there's more like architecture that's kind of native to the planet. It looks really cool. I wish they kind of took a bit more risks in terms of the areas because it gets to that like kind of gamey point. Like, okay, you have the generic kind of starter area, you have the hot area, you have the area that's kind of more cold, you have the water area, like the general video gamey levels that you kind of get. And I wish they had taken a bit more risks in terms of coming up with like unique locations, and they do that in some places when especially when the game starts to get more into like the Chozo aspects of the story. But outside of that, I feel like some of them aren't as memorable. Like I feel like I'm not going to remember some of the areas of Dread as I would some from previous games, but maybe just because I've seen these themes over and over again. You've seen the cold area before, the hot area before. But then like there are iconic or like I don't know, really memorable shots in the game that you remember from like the gameplay and reveal earlier, and then they show up in this game here, like you mentioned, like in the lava area where you're moving through that tunnel, and you see the big like huge, I don't know what it is, like the big structure in the background. I guess that's like dealing with the thermal like generator, and like you have to eventually turn that back on later in the game, and you kind of run by that at one point. Like that's a really awesome visual. So they take advantage of the themes and like aesthetics they've created for each environment. I just wish they took more risks in those like fundamental ideas. But the ideas they picked, they did a really good job. The visuals are great. Like the environments look really awesome and lived in and natural and like vivid, which look really cool. So I love all like the water area. I forget what it's called. It starts with a B. I'm forgetting all the level areas like Arteria and whatnot. Like that water area is sick. I love like the torrential downpour and like the huge waves as you're like getting in and out of like a shovel nearby. Like, yeah, that stuff is that stuff is perfect. Like that is awesome. Like depictions of those areas. So I think they really nailed it in that respect. So yeah, I love a lot of the areas in this game.
Dude, I actually wrote down in my notes. I was like, when I got to Brenia, the water area,
yeah.
and like you see like the waves crashing and like I gasped aloud. I was like, oh my god, like this just looks like absolutely spectacular.
Looks sick, yeah.
Oh my god, it just looked like absolutely so incredible. I can understand what you're saying actually about the kind of video gamey area, because like each area definitely is themed, but I think for me, I'm okay with that, even though it is kind of, you know, like you said, video gamey. I think I'd rather have my areas just have kind of a unique identifier, even if it is kind of something we've seen before and treaded before,
Yeah.
Versus maybe them kind of running together. But like you said, like Ferenia, which is the big Chozo city, I mean, that place just looks absolutely awesome. And
absolutely.
It looks like somewhere that was lived in. There are some other areas that look very, very cool as well, which we'll save maybe for next week. But yeah, I think that they did such a good job of the areas. Each area also, which we'll talk a little bit more when we do Mapping Metroid, but I think like each area has at least like one absolutely bonkers Shine Spark puzzle as well to figure out.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's a lot of really good stuff in all of the different areas. So I think that like I was imagining like if you were a first time Metroid player, I think that you would look, and maybe as long time Metroid players were like, okay, this is the ice area, blah blah blah. But I think that there's a lot to like really love when you are coming in and you're just like, wow, like this is like so cool, and like how am I gonna overcome all this water and like Samus's mobility issues and stuff like that. I really thought that all the areas were like really, really awesome.
Yeah, they were crafted really well. Like my point was really kind of nitpicky. Like I think like the ideas they went for, they were executed very well. Even if they did go for like, okay, this is like the kind of water area like that every video game has, they went, you know, all out with it. And it looks really sick. Like the coral environments look really cool in the underwater areas, and then you have like those huge waves at the surface. Like that looks awesome. So like I even if like I might have liked them to go at an idea level a little bit more risky, the execution of the ideas they came up with were awesome, so I'm okay with it. I think my only real issue, if I had to pick a real issue, is that all the area names just blend together for me, bro. Like, you have Arteria, Quirteria, Boreria, Nemeria, like, they're all the same, and I'm like, dude, what I don't know which one is which. Like, I wish, like, they're kind of like, you write your first sci-fi story in first grade, and you're like, as a kid, you don't know, like, what cool names to come up with, so they have that same, like, generic sci-fi, like, naming scheme that this game has, which again, very nitpicky, and I don't really care. I just thought that was funny because like another area would come up, it would be like Ferraria. I'm like, oh, dude, like, come on, you could have spent a little more time coming up with some cooler area names.
No, I agree with you. Actually,
was funny.
It wasn't as bad as Axiom Verge. I don't know why I kept thinking about that in terms of the areas, but I remember the names in that game, and it was like these like foreign language just gibberish names, so like at least they're not like as bad.
Yeah.
And I think that like as you know, as we play Dread more, like they're going to become more commonplace and more like the back of our hand, we're going to be able to rattle them off. But like, yeah, I agree. Like I think that when you play Metroid Prime, you can very easily
know the names.
I think you have an easier time remembering those names, probably because there are two words, and also probably because there's generally less areas. But like, everybody remembers Sanctuary Fortress or Aegon Wastes or
Because it's like a mix of
Phendrana
it's like a mix
Drifts.
of a unique name and a common word. Chozo Ruins,
Yes.
Phendrana
Yeah.
Drifts, it's like a combination. But like here, it's just a random, unique name. And if it was
Yeah.
like Arteria Ruins or something like that, it would be a lot easier for me to remember that. Of course, I'm just kind of joking about it, and because that's the thing with this game is that you gotta get very nitpicky because like it's all overall really good, and like the things that like it's weak on are very like minor in nature and aren't really important at the end of the day. I think in most cases there are some things that are exception to that, but like for this, like this is like all the areas are really awesome, but the names are kind of like who cares? But overall, I think the execution is really good.
Yeah, I agree with you. Okay, well, talked about the areas. Let's talk about the giant area within an area. The main selling feature, or one of the main gimmicks of Metroid Dread, is of course the EMMIs
Oh
and
yeah,
the EMMI zones. Um, oof, dude,
I
I
love these.
saw I saw more game over screens than I've seen in my entire life, I
Oh
think,
yeah,
playing Metroid Dread.
yeah.
My God.
I think I've died, I want to say 250, 300 times, I want to say at this point, playing the game in an EMMI zone or outside an EMMI zone. 100%.
Yeah, it's bonkers, but I really actually really like the EMMI zones, and they're much better, and they get progressively better as the game goes.
Oh, yeah.
But when I saw them, I was just like, okay, this is going to be kind of a cool stealth gimmick and whatnot. But it's really like it's really well done, and I don't know, I wasn't expecting it not to be well done, but maybe I was just expecting me not to like it as much as I did, because it's like it really does create like the perfect amount of tension, and you also have like a really like you have a wide variety of ways to deal with the EMMIs if you want to be stealthy and use your phantom cloak, if you kind of want to be a little bit ballsy and jump over them, which I've tried to do a couple times here
Oh
and there.
yeah, you gotta do that.
Yeah, there's a lot of like really different rewarding ways that you can deal with the EMMIs, and I really just like enjoyed outsmarting them. But also when the thing is chasing you, particularly as you get further into the game, and like maybe let's just stop at the yellow EMMI, because the yellow EMMI, and we won't talk about anyone's after that, but the yellow EMMI has the speed boost function, and
Oh my god.
he goes after you. It's like, oh my absolute god, this thing is gonna just kill me as soon as he catches me, which he did a lot. But I really enjoyed the EMMI zones, and I really did also appreciate how they would just bring you back to the start of the EMMI zone if you died, which is important because I think everyone listening to this has probably died about 100 times at least. But yeah, I really enjoyed these zones more than I thought that I would. It was tense. Mm-hmm. It was fun. You can see the SAX kind of inspiration behind it, particularly when they're chasing you. I'm a big fan of like stealth gameplay, so this was like really hitting on all cylinders to me. And I did like too that you could like it took you a long time, but it didn't take you like overwhelmingly long in order to get the Omega Cannon and like
no, definitely not.
Defeat the EMMIs. So I really appreciated that. But yeah, EMMI zones were like a really big highlight of the game for me, as I think that they probably were for a lot of people.
One thing I was worried about when they were first announced, like they called them, EMMI zones. They're in their own room, and I was like, oh, that's kind of disappointing. I was hoping the EMMIs would be like across the entire area. You have to constantly worry about them and not be just relegated to a single like zone or room. But then when I learned that these EMMI zones are actually really big and they're like kind of the core of each area and they spread out and branch out in different areas, I loved it that much more because it's a nice balance. It doesn't take up the whole area, but there's, each zone is multiple rooms that you kind of have to work through. And yeah, the EMMIs are so sick. Like I'm one of, I almost never did the stealth thing. There was a point in the game where you kind of have to, like they're that like strong and relentless, and they are really relentless, which is sick. They're like the SAX like times 100. They're so much better. I love the EMMI encounters. Like I'll just be like, all right, I'll run in and like quickly try to get across. Like, oh my god, like, and like just freak out, like, and then like it's like the episode of SpongeBob where they run through the perfume zone. They run through the perfume department. I'm like, oh my god, like just get to the other side really quickly, and then like you get to the other side, like, whew, all right, you made it, and it's so worth it when after like dying a few times and you finally actually get through, or when you finally kill the EMMI. The yellow EMMI in particular is such a oh my god, I have so many words I could
It
say.
took me forever
And
to get the right spot
well,
to
that's
get
the thing about
that
that
guy.
Emmy
God.
is so, I think, really awesome about that boss fight is that a lot of that zone doesn't have like a really long stretch of area. I found to like take it out all
Yeah.
at once. Like you'd have to use the Omega Stream first, like blast off its like face shield or whatever, blast its head off at first, then run away for a little bit and get set up again for the final shot with the Omega Cannon. And I love that kind of like multi-phase setup on the boss because like even when you get that first Omega Stream done, you're like, oh, it's so close. You finally blast it off. You still got to run away and get into position again. It forces you to use all your different, like the things you use, like your gravity or your grapple beam, your flash shift. Of course, your flash shift. This game would be unplayable without the flash shift, as far as I'm concerned. I don't think I ever even tried to counter the Emmys because I would be too afraid and getting into the quick time
Oh, as
event.
soon as that Emmy gets you, you're toast. I didn't counter him once.
Oh, I've definitely gotten the quick time event multiple times, but I've never tried to go for an actual melee counter. I'm not even sure it's possible, but there are times where I've even tried to like jump around and break its angles, and you can do it. You can quickly get around it, and you're like, oh my god, don't touch me, and like yeah, I think the fighting the Emmys, especially the like the yellow Emmy, but even beyond that, like this game, like every time I was like, wow, that boss battle was awesome, that fight was great. It hits me with another one that's even better, but. The Emmy.
Did you get to the blue Emmy
I
yet?
did, dude. I I don't even know if
Okay.
I screw the
Let's
blue
break
Emmy.
our own rules here, because the blue Emmy was absolutely ridiculous. So after you get your Omega Cannon, there is nowhere that there is a big stretch of like ground for you to hit this guy. So it took me forever to get him into the right spot, and eventually I realized that you had to take the spider magnet and go across.
Yes, dude,
and then
that
hit him
took
while he was
me-
on the ceiling.
Bro, that took me so long to figure out when you finally could
Oh
do it
my
on the
God.
ceiling. But I was like, okay, that was really awesome though, because you had to fight it like upside down, and when you finally figure out, you're
Yeah.
like, ah, finally. Screw you!
Yeah.
Oh my god!
I felt so smart after, even though I like really was so dumb because it took me like 50 tries
Took
to
me
get him.
forever.
But
Yeah, dude, the Emmys
Oh.
are so sick. I think they're some of the best implemented enemies in not only a Metroid game but just in a game period. Like I loved fighting them. They're so cool. I died a ton of times. But it was so worth it. It was very satisfying when you finally get your comeuppance on them and you finally take them down. You move on and then you can move through the Emmy zone. As far as you want with no concern. Yeah, I really well implemented part of the game. One of the best parts of the game, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I agree. I agree, and I do like too that like once you do like eliminate the Emmy, the Emmy zone really just like integrates fairly seamlessly in with the like surrounding area. Like it's populated with enemies. It's populated with, I guess not environmental things because those are already there, but like you're more free to explore a little bit since you obviously don't have the Emmy chasing after you. So yeah, the Emmy zone itself is massive, which is very cool and gives you a little bit of play. But I did like how after the Emmy was gone, it wasn't just like when like you go into a boss room sometimes and you're just like, oh yeah, this is where I fought so and so and so.
Yep.
It just felt like it was part of like Arteria or Kataris afterwards, which I thought was very cool. But yeah, man, the Emmys were just like, my god, they were so good. Oh, I mean, what a great mechanic, a great sense of like just tension, which is obviously what the game was going for. They really just like knocked it out of the park with these things, and like, yeah, just to prove that I'm a bad Metroid player, I never countered an Emmy once. I was pressing X at like every which time, and Samus just kind of meekly kicked the Emmy, and then he like spiked me right in the face, and yeah, I never countered them. As soon as they caught me, I was just like, well, game over, buddy. Game over.
It's hard. The timing is not easy. Even on some other non-Emmy bosses, you have some quick time events you got to do, and I got caught off guard, and I was like, oh, okay, this isn't just a little cutscene here. I got to actually do something. Yeah, no, I did get it a few times, and I think eventually, yeah, my hit rate went lower and lower and lower as time went on. But it's something that, like you said, it's really good that they put you right outside the Emmy zone if you die, so you can just jump right back in again, because that just makes it the replayability and like the frustration, the replayability goes up, frustration goes down a little bit, because like, all right, I didn't just lose all my progress after going through that Emmy zone, or like forcing you to look for a save room before jumping in. Like they just kind of help you out there, which I think is more than fine.
Yeah, actually, Metroid Dread is very good at doing this. Just in general, like it'll start you at a boss, or it'll start you at an EMMI or whatever. And like, yeah, I appreciated that about this game because it is a hard game, which we'll talk about in a little bit here. But before we get there, I want to talk about some of the new items and just like implementation of items in general in this game. One thing that really stuck out to me when I was playing is like, man, you do not get the morph ball for like a good hour into your first playthrough, or maybe even more. I'm on my second playthrough now, and I'm about 50 minutes in, and I still don't have the morph ball. And it's like, you really take for granted how versatile that thing really is. And even after you get the morph ball, I think it's like a minute before you get the bombs as well. So
Yep.
really made me appreciate those like standard Metroid items. But yeah, I think that there's like a lot of really great, there's some really great new items, and there's like really good implementation of old items in this game. Phantom Cloak is one of the new items that I think is like very, very cool. It's not particularly useful in like the second half of the game, because by then you can kind of like either stand up to the EMMIs, or you've learned enough about the EMMIs to the point where like you can outmaneuver them. But I think that it's really helpful in the first couple areas where you get it. So I thought that that was really cool, and it was definitely really nice just to be able, like you said earlier, to push a button instead of like where Samus Returns, you had to cycle through all of your like different Aeon abilities. Actually, I really like that about this game in general, is that like nothing, like you could just press a button basically for everything. There wasn't any like toggling through
Yeah.
of anything like that. So yeah, Phantom Cloak was awesome, and of course the flash shift was, I mean, like a game changer, particularly for boss battles, I thought.
The flash shift is far and away one of the best like abilities in any Metroid game ever, and no surprise because it's an air dash, and that just makes any game better. And the fact that you can do 3 of them in the air, it's so sick. You can, your bar recharges pretty quickly after using them, so you can continue to use them a lot. You're forced to use it a lot of the time. Some bosses, it makes it a requirement. You got to stay that mobile, using that to stay alive. I love the flash shift. It's so sick. It makes this game so much fun. The Shadow Cloak is really cool. Obviously the slide I think is a really nice touch as well. It makes just, a nice streamlining of the game, and it makes sense that the morph ball is, introduced later than usual because the slide is there. Overall, I think there's some really awesome, additions to, the game. They kind of mixed in like the diffusion beam, which is a cool little touch. It's a nice, like, different group of abilities from previous games. And you have, the stacking, which I think is really good. Like you said, you don't have to toggle through stuff. Everything just kind of stacks, which is nice. I think overall, my only issue with this game, I think this might actually be my biggest issue with the game, is, dude, what is this game's obsession with making me go through water areas without the gravity suit? I don't know what it is, but you get the gravity suit so late in this game. And
Very late,
and it
yes.
is, honestly, I think that's probably the thing I like, or I hate about this game the most, is that you go underwater like a dozen times. I think this is the most I think I've spent underwater in a Metroid game without the gravity suit. I was spending like an hour or more of game time in these underwater areas, and I'm like, please end me. Like, there's so many times I'm like, this is so slow, or like you screw up and you fall slowly all the way to the bottom, and then you go all the way back up slowly to the ledge you were trying to space jump to, or whatever, you underwater. Like, if there's one thing I could change about this game, is making the gravity suit available like a much earlier. Like, I don't know what this game's obsession is with forcing me to play underwater without the gravity suit, but I hated that. That's something I would absolutely change.
Yeah, I agree. Actually, I wrote that down too. Where it's like it takes a while to get the gravity.
Like, what
suit,
is
and
the
you are
delay?
Yeah, I can appreciate that. I don't know if I would say it was like a huge issue for me, but then again, like I did notice it too, particularly when like you don't have the grapple beam, or you don't have the space jump. That was, once you got the space jump, particularly, I feel like it really alleviated a lot of that for me, because then it was kind of like a neat little challenge to like line up your jumps and continually go, and you can kind of break that puzzle down that way. But yeah, when you're just in the water,
Dude.
and you're in the water a lot, yeah, it's definitely a little bit slow moving. So, but that, I feel like that was kind of the theme of this game, is like you would, power ups that you would usually expect to get fairly early, like the morph ball, like the gravity suit, you're like the bombs. You're waiting a little bit longer than you particularly would, so you kind of have to find different ways around some of those things. So yeah, I noticed that too, but I don't know that I absolutely hated it.
I
One thing that I
hated
did
it.
have. Tell me what you think of this, and I'm not sure if you've got here yet, but I think that the pacing for getting some of these items was a little bit awkward.
Yeah.
Particularly, you get the double jump in the forest area, which is like actually really cool. But then, like immediately after, you get the space jump. I think that's your direct next power up that you get afterwards. So it's just kind of like it's immediately rendered useless. And I was just kind of like, oh, okay. And I kind of feel the same way about the cross bombs, which to a lesser extent, because those are still useful if you want to quickly dash across like breakable blocks. But you get the cross bombs, which is extremely helpful just for breaking blocks in a much faster and speedier way. But then your direct power up after that is the power bomb, and it's not as quickly after that, but it is your next one that you get after that, which kind of renders that one a little bit less useful as well. So I was thinking like I think I maybe would have had the cross bombs and definitely the double jump show up earlier in the game so that you can at least get some use out of it before it is completely nerfed by their more powerful power-ups.
Yeah, I thought that was kind of weird. I also thought the seeker missile or storm missile in this game was also implemented a little weird, because at first it's very obvious that they're only there to open storm missile doors. And I'm like, dude, like this could easily be a normal door, but it's not. And they like have this a mechanic in the game just to open those doors. Thankfully, they eventually implemented it into the boss fights. There was like one boss fight towards the like I guess end of the second act, beginning of the third act of the game. There's that one Corpius looking kind of boss. It's like being experimented on.
I actually thought that it was. Actually, I'm gonna save what I was about to say, but I thought it was Corpius coming back.
No, it's not Corpius coming back. It's the one that's in that room that's kind of being like.
Oh, I know what you're talking about, but when I saw him, I thought that was Corpius.
Oh,
first.
okay, yeah, no, I did too, but then I realized like, oh hey, like this guy's back. But anyway, I guess there's multiple ones, But anyway, that boss fight, and it's like you have a little portion of that fight where you can use the storm missiles to like deal a little extra damage that's clawed to all the different parts of the wall. That was cool. I'm like, okay, that's fine. So yeah, I think the implementation of items overall and like I guess abilities in the game overall like are pretty solid ranges. You have some that are implemented pretty well or as you'd expected. Most of the classic Metroid abilities. You have some that are really, really good and really awesome additions like the flash shift, which is just like so cool. And then you have stuff that I think like either comes a little too late or just like it's kind of just there because there's an obstacle and it needs to be unlocked by something. Which I kind of have the feeling some few things are like something like the cross bomb, which kind of gets I guess made obsolete pretty quickly afterward. So yeah, it's a range. Overall, I'd say it's pretty successful. I wish they took a little more risk overall, but like the areas they did take a risk on, like the flash shift, turned out really well. So I'm happy that I'm overall happy with the execution.
I will say about the storm missiles. I would have agreed with you, but then yes, you have the boss fight where you are required to use them, but then like. Particularly in the last boss fight of this game, like the storm missiles were awesome because
then that's fine.
Like the big thing about that is like you can just lock on, and even if you're facing the other direction, they'll fire. So it's a much more effective way of dealing damage. So I did like them for that.
All right.
But yeah, I agree. I wish that the cross bomb was a little bit earlier, but I really do like that power up. I think it's a really cool idea, and I hope that it comes back. But yeah, just the pacing of it was a little bit off. I will say, my God, the speed boost in this game is awesome.
Yep, 100%.
It's awesome. Although I guess one small critique, I wish it would have just activated if you just ran instead of you having to press it down. Because like I forgot to press the button down like a pathetic amount of times. I was like, why aren't I speed boosting? But dude, this thing, like the way that you can continually use your momentum is just off the charts, man. Like sliding and wall jumping, and like there's just some crazy solutions to these crazy shine spark puzzles that you've seen on Twitter and stuff like that, and like it just makes you feel like so smart and like such a master to pull off these shine spark maneuvers. I will say that shine sparking in mid-air is harder in this game, but mostly because, like, as Metroid fans, we're so used to just like pressing up B to charge up your shine spark, and you don't do that in this game. You kind of have to stop spinning and then press B, so that took a little bit of getting used to. But dude, this shine spark is just like freaking awesome. It's awesome. It's so satisfying to finally have this back in a 2D Metroid and have new shine spark puzzles. I'm like a huge sucker for shine spark puzzles, so I was absolutely loving. I was loving this. It was awesome.
Yeah, it's really satisfying to use. It looks awesome. I actually like the new version of it because it seems like you might be able to like get a shine spark or like the speed booster quicker than an older game just by being able to like activate it immediately, like hitting that button press like right when you start running. Maybe I'm wrong. It might just be the exact same length as it was previous, but I kind of like that. I guess it's like makes the game a little more accessible. So like some people who might not want to activate the speed boost like aren't forced to because it would activate automatically in the past. There are definitely times though where I would be like, why am I not speed boosting in time? Or like I wouldn't hit it in time and end up just running to the end and be like, and I have to run all the way back and then go back and do it again. So yeah, it's something again that just like the controls, you kind of have to get used to it first, but once you get used to it and it makes you feel more confident in using that stuff, it makes sense, and I think it's implemented well. And I like how it looks. It looks awesome. It feels awesome. It's very satisfying to use like pretty much every ability in this game, I think, for the most part. So yeah, really great to have it back and see it, and it's probably one of its best forms in a Metroid game.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, one more critique before we move on from items here. But so I was going through, and I could see the doors with 3 eyes and the big blocks with 3 eyes, and I was like, all right, obviously I need to get the spazer beam here and shoot these bad boys away. And you get the spazer beam, and it's called the wide beam, and I was like, what? This is the spazer beam.
Yeah.
It's been the spazer beam since forever. Come on.
There's actually a couple of things with this game that are weird continuity wise about that. Like you have that. You also have the fact that the Varia suit doesn't protect against cold. The gravity suit now does, which like I guess I understand from like a gameplay point of view. Like they didn't want to have the accessibility to really hot places and really cold places open at the same time. By getting the Varia suit, but like I was like,
I can forgive that actually because of like the Metroid DNA thing.
But it just felt so weird because I'm like, dude, I have the Varia suit. Why can I not go in the cold? Like what? And then the gravity suit grants you that. And I'm like, well, why would the gravity suit give me cold? Like what? Like at least like that's when I kind of wish. And again, I haven't played the end of the game, so I don't know if there's another suit you get or whatever. But like as far as I know in the game so far, there's just the regular power suit, the Varia suit, and the gravity suit. And that's again where I kind of wish they took more of a risk and were like, I wish they kind of gave us something that's a bit more new. Now again, if there's something in the game, I have a feeling there is, that's fine, but I kind of wish that from the get-go they did more. And that was the thing too, is they kind of don't really explain in game, again, unless they do at the end, why Samus's suit looks the way it does, but whatever. There are some continuity things about this game that I'm kind of like, all right, I guess. Like, that's weird. That wasn't how it was previously, but whatever. But yeah, that was something that I noticed. I'm like, I have the Varia suit. Let me go in the cold. Like, come on.
They do not explain that.
No.
I'll just
okay.
Throw
So
that
that's
But I think that I will say. So I really love the Varia suit, and I love the gravity suit. I think I really like the white on Samus's suit. It just looks really sleek.
Mm-hmm.
But I felt like every suit upgrade that I got, I was like, you know what? I just want to play in like the Dread suit with the blue for like the whole game because I really loved how that looked. So like I thought that the orange looked really well, or really nice as well. I thought that the purple looked pretty good. But I just really wanted to play in like the Dread suit for the whole game. So I was obviously this is just a me thing, but I was like, oh man, I wish I could just like keep that one suit on or something like that because it just looks so good, but you don't see it for a lot of the game.
No, I agree.
That's a minor critique. But yeah, okay, let's move on. We kind of touched on this. Actually, no. Before we get there, let's talk about some of the early bosses, and maybe we'll just limit ourselves. We've talked about the EMMIs. Maybe we'll just limit ourselves to Corpius and to Kraid. And we'll start with our man Corpius. We spent a little bit of time talking about him on our Nintendo Minute Watch Along. But dude, this guy is a blast to fight. Like a great opening boss. Lots of different phases when he turns invisible and he's this like hucking acid at you, I thought was great. I really love that you can like slide under him. At this point, I think you only have missiles, you have your slide, and you don't really have a whole lot of other upgrades. You get the Phantom Cloak after beating him, but it makes really good use, and you have the Spider Magnet, of course. And it makes really good use of like the abilities that you do have. You have to use a Spider Magnet to avoid the acid when it goes on the ground. You use your slide in a really creative way. You immediately have to counter after that. You get some absolutely boss cutscenes of like Samus just pumping Corpius in the face with missiles. The tail was really good. And I think the thing about this boss, but actually like every boss in this game, is like it was really hard. I'm sure I died the first time, but like once you nail the pattern, you can do it without like taking a single hit. I was really, I think that this might be up there with like the best intro bosses of the series.
Yeah, I mean, there are definitely some bosses later in the game where even if you know what to do, they still body you. This is definitely one where once you figure it out, there's really no reason to lose. So yeah, it makes it the perfect entry kind of boss. It looks awesome. The environment and like area you fight it in is so sick. But like, Corpius himself, like just like any boss in this game, like it's not just like, okay, like you follow the pattern 3 times, you hit it 3 times and it's dead. It has multiple phases that are different. It goes invisible, it's spraying acid, it's swinging at you in different ways. You got to slide under it, you got to do the quick time event. Like every boss in this game, like really every boss, the EMMIs and all the other non-enemy bosses have like really cool patterns that shift depending on the phase, and forces you to kind of change up your game style for the most part. There are some exceptions. You kind of just can do the same thing over and over again. But like, yeah, I love this game where it feels very dynamic, and you're jumping on the wall, you're clinging to the wall, you're sliding around, you're avoiding stuff on the ground, in the air, you're jumping over swings, you're sliding through and blasting it with missiles and all that stuff. Yeah, I the creativity and like the intensity of these bosses in this game are some of the best. And honestly, I think this game probably has the best bosses overall out of probably even any Metroid game, even the Prime ones, potentially. It has a really solid case for it. It's some of the best boss battles in a Metroid game, period. And Corpius is a really solid entry because it kind of sets the foundation for all those other bosses where like, okay, like it's not just a simple pump and dump kind of boss. You just throw missiles in and hope it dies. Like there's a lot of acrobatics. You got to move around. You got to use the mechanics you're given, and it gives you a taste of what's to come later. So really awesome boss fight.
I think I agree. I think that I can say like Metroid Dread might have the best bosses in the entire series. Like if you go boss for boss for boss, and maybe we'll talk about this more on a future episode, but like every boss is awesome. Like there's not really a stinker of the bunch. So I think I could be down with that. I want to talk about Big Daddy Kraid though, because this is far and away the best Kraid fight in the series.
Yep.
Not that we're really comparing a ton, but still. This fight, oh dude, it was so awesome. The cinematics of this fight, I felt bad for Kraid because he's down there, he's captive in the lava, he's chained up and stuff, but like this was such a wicked fight. You had the classic kind of Kraidisms where he's throwing the spikes or whatever, I guess, at you.
His claws,
the stuff
his
is shooting out
nails
from his belly. Yeah, his claws. Oh god, his belly button just looks absolutely grotesque.
Yeah.
Grotesque. Ugh.
He's got like pus coming out. It's all like inflamed and whatnot. And Samus like, I'm gonna stick my foot in that.
Oh, it's horrible.
It's like,
actually,
awesome.
So one of the coolest things about this boss fight is, which is a cool thing about this game in general too, is like you can sequence break and you can get the morph ball before you get to Kraid. And if you do that, there's actually like a little morph ball tunnel that you can go into, and like you can get in there and like zip right into Kraid's belly button, which is
really
absolutely disgusting. I'm pretty sure it goes into Kraid's belly button. Yeah.
Wow.
I saw a video of it posted from Metroid Database, and it was pretty cool. But yeah, this was like such a good fight, and actually pretty hard too, particularly the second half where like you're down and like you're basically just shooting at his gut and you're trying to shoot missiles into his belly button. It took me a while because like in most other Kraid fights, you're just like trying to pump him as quick as you can so he can die before he can really damage you. Whereas this one, you kind of have to slow down, and you have to shoot all of the things that are being fired at you, and just like make sure that you are taking care of all of the other stuff before you go and fire at Kraid himself. This was just like an awesome battle. I'm a Kraid mark. I love seeing Kraid, so it was so cool to see him come back. And yeah, it's just like another great boss fight in a game that was full of them.
Yeah, I definitely think it's the best Kraid boss fight. I wouldn't say it's very hard though. I mean, I think I only died a couple times compared to. I'm talking relative to other Dread boss fights. Like compared to Kraid boss fights, yeah, it might be the hardest. But in terms of the game overall, I died way more in other areas of the game and in other boss fights
Yeah.
compared to these two. I think I only died like a couple times to Kraid, just like getting the hang of like the encounter overall. Yeah, but it's still an awesome fight. You know, there's really sick scenes of Samus like running up, Kraid's, body. And honestly, again, this is the theme of this game too, is that it was so funny how people are so worried. Oh, they're spoiling the game. They're showing too much. Like what we saw post or pre-launch, like doesn't even scratch the surface really of a lot of the stuff you end up playing in this game. And like even though Kraid isn't the first boss in the game, or maybe even not even the second potentially, he's still in the early or at least the first half of the game. And it's like, how could you not show this boss fight off? We even what we saw from the Kraid, reveal didn't give us the whole boss fight and like everything that had to do with the Kraid fight overall, or like the ending or anything like that. Like there was even more to this boss fight than we had seen, let alone the game. So yeah, it was no way they couldn't show this off pre-launch. It was a really awesome boss fight, definitely the best Kraid boss fight until Meta Kraid in Prime 4. And yeah, I think this was really sick. It was cool to bring him back. It was a really sick like evolution of his fight where it felt familiar, but it was still, a cool way to make it more dynamic. They had a bunch of different, phases and whatnot, but then you incorporated like the classic stuff, him throwing his nails and all that, like, the great Kraid stuff, shooting him in the mouth with the missiles, like stuff fighting him from below as he's all the way up there at the top of the room, stuff you come to expect, parts where you're jumping on his, like the stuff he shoots out of his belly, like the spikes, and you're jumping on them to get to the top. Like that's perfect Kraid boss fight stuff, but it had a nice couple twists in there to make it feel new and fresh. So again, I think honestly perfectly executed. A perfectly executed Kraid boss fight in 2D Metroid.
Yeah, I agree. You couldn't say it any better myself. Yeah, and like I said, we'll go in depth into the bosses because there's a lot to talk about. A lot of great bosses. I don't know that I would say maybe the final boss fight you could say is spoiler-esque, but other than that, I think that you could have shown like every single boss fight, and like none of them are spoilers themselves. So it definitely made sense to show Kraid because you're gonna, for non-Metroid fans, it's like this is an awesome looking big monster, and like for Metroid fans, it was like, oh my god, it's Kraid! Like yeah, so I really do love that they chose to show off our boy. One other thing I wanted to talk about, I wasn't sure if this was like story or if it was like a function of the game, so I just threw it in this episode, and we don't have to spend a lot of time talking about it if you don't want, but I really do like the way that they used Adam in this game. And I've kind of beat up on Adam before, particularly in Metroid Fusion, but he was used in pretty much the capacity that I hoped he would be, which was very minimal. He didn't intrude on the game a lot. He basically gave you like a few quick tidbits at the save stations, and not every save station. So I did like the way that he was implemented. I will say that if we ever do get a Metroid Fusion remake, they got to do something else with Adam's voice, though, because I couldn't listen to like an entire game of that.
Yeah, there are definitely points where I was like, all right, hey. As someone who liked Adam in Fusion, I'm gonna say this is one of the parts of the game that kind of disappoints me. Again, I can't give a full judgment on any particular character because I haven't seen their full arc. But I can safely say that at least from what I've seen, I can come to some conclusions on Adam as a character here. I think my thing with Adam is that in Fusion, I thought he was a really good character as a character, not as as a gameplay mechanic, whatever. Like thoughts on that? We've said that before. I think he was still fine gameplay wise in Fusion, but as a character in the story, I liked how he went from an AI who was just an AI to kind of realizing his actual former identity and becoming more humanized as a result. And by the end, he's very much more humanized than he was in the beginning of the game. And in this game, all of that character development seems to be gone. Like, aside from maybe one or two lines, he just seems like a generic AI. Like, if you told me he was an Adam, you're just someone else, I would believe you. Because I don't feel at all that this is the same Adam from Fusion. And I was pretty disappointed because one of the things I really was looking forward to in this game was more of that development of of the Samus and Dread and Adam kind of not relationship, but like them as characters, and even Adam as a character. Not that it has to go crazy or anything, and like have him have a full arc or anything, but I would have liked at least that development not to kind of be, I don't know, ignored essentially, because it doesn't seem like he's acting as he did in the beginning of Fusion, and I didn't really get the same sense that this Adam in Dread had gone through the same character development that the Fusion Adam did. So as a gameplay function, I thought he was kind of disappointing too, because he kind of just feels useless. I almost feel like he never gives useful information. I would say maybe like 10% of the time what he tells you is useful. Like most of the time it's something you already know. He's like, yeah, you can't go in these hot areas, they're hot. I'm like, I know that, dude, I've already been there. Like, or you can't do this because you haven't gotten this yet. Like, yeah, I'm aware I don't have it. Or he's like, oh, you're not at full strength. I'm aware that I'm not going to be able to take on the demon Chozo that bodied me in the beginning of the game. Like, I wish he kind of was. I don't need him to hold my hand through the game, but I was hoping he would be a little more informative, or at the very least, if he wasn't going to be informative or better guide, be a better character in the story. So Adam is definitely one of the weak parts of this. As someone who was looking forward to Dread in terms of the story aspect, that part did not meet my expectations. So I'm hoping that the ending kind of gives me a little more of what I'm looking for. I have a feeling it's not going to, but yeah, that is one of the weaker parts of the game for me.
Okay, I had some thoughts about what you would think of the story, because actually let's just save it for next week when we do the story breakdown. But I know that I liked the way that Adam was implemented, but I wasn't sure that you would when I was playing it. So it seems like that is the case. But yeah, we'll really break that down next week when we go into the story and what our expectations were and all that good stuff. But as a gameplay mechanic, I thought that he was more bearable. But yeah, that voice though is
well, there's a thing too about this game is that it exposition dumps on you a little bit, where it's just like, all right, a character's now going to talk at Samus for a while, which I understand and that's fine. But like Adam kind of does that a little bit. He doesn't do it too bad though. Most of his like little sections are pretty short. And I actually really liked, this is something I did like about this, how you can go through like the event log of the game, and you can go back to what you've done and what Adam has said and what other people have said. That was really helpful and awesome, because I was like, oh yeah, like this is, I don't have to remember what he had said or what someone else had said. What I've done. That was a really nice touch. So yeah, like I said, again, a big reason why I wanted Dread in the first place is I wanted to follow through and conclude some things from Fusion, and the continuity is not all there yet. And I want to finish the game so I can make a full determination of that. But from what I've experienced, some aspects of the game are very continuous and like are very faithful to Fusion and other things. And I was like, wow, this is awesome. Like I kind of want to say something spoilery right now because it's boiling up in me, so I'm gonna say it. So I guess, I don't know if you're still listening and worried about some spoilers, but bro, when you let the X out and you can start collecting X and absorbing them like in Fusion, and then when you fight a couple bosses and they have a core X at the end, bro, that was awesome. I popped off, bro, when the X started flying out of that building and you can start collecting. I was like, yes, thank you. And then when the core X showed up, I was like, yes, and you're just fighting, like there's no, like it just surprises you with it. I was like, oh my god, like yes, like this is part of the game where the continuity from Fusion and like the faithfulness to Fusion and it being a Fusion sequel is perfect. Like they nail that. I'm like, oh my god, like this is so, like this is a Fusion fan. I popped off. I was like, wow, this is perfect. Other parts of the game, like with Adam's depiction, not so much. So again, saving till the end till I finish it. But like, yeah, that like stuff like that made me really excited. Other parts of it, I was like, I kind of wish that they had done something different here or done it better, but I'm gonna leave my character and story based stuff to the end because I haven't finished the game. But stuff like that reveal with the X was I lost my mind on that, man. I love that so much.
Yeah, that was awesome, and we'll elaborate next week because I have a lot of thoughts on the story as well, and there was a few moments where I was playing where I was thinking of you and like what you would think. But yeah, let's get into that next week. I'm really excited for next week's show. Mm-hmm. Two other things that I want to cover before we get on out of here. The difficulty of this game. I think that this might be the hardest Metroid game.
Oh
I
yeah,
really do.
easily.
I think that it is. But not just because you can like die to the Emmys really quickly in one hit. Like I just think of in terms of like bosses. I think in terms of like the enemies that hit you. By the way, actually, we didn't talk about the enemies, but like, God, there is just a plethora of different enemy types in this game, and like they're most of them are all awesome. They don't do. There's probably like a term for this, but like they don't do like here's the blue version of the
Yeah.
same enemy and he's stronger, and now there's the green version and he's even stronger than the blue one. So like they don't really do that in this game, which I really love. It really awesome enemy selection. But those enemies kick your ass. They hit really
Dude.
hard.
Yeah,
Like
this game is the most challenging 2D Metroid. Or maybe I think it's the most challenging Metroid game. Period.
I think the most Metroid. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because like, and I've heard, I don't know, I've heard a lot of people say that Fusion is really challenging, and I've never really thought that. I've actually always thought that Fusion was like on the easier side.
Oh yeah,
and I guess we also need to differentiate too, because there's difficult in terms of like the enemies hitting you and stuff, and then there's difficult in terms of like not knowing where to go.
Yeah.
I would say Super Metroid is pretty difficult in terms of not knowing where to go, but the enemies themselves aren't really that hard. Whereas in this game, I think that there's definitely certainly times when it's challenging. You're just like, I don't know where to go. I feel like I'm stuck, especially if you're going to 100% the game. But yeah, just like the enemies just smoke you. Like I did a boss fight which happened after a cutscene, and anyone that's been there will know what I'm talking about. And I must have died like 50 times to this dude before finally somehow I got it. But I also like because there was a tweet going around, and someone was like, this game is unplayable, it's so hard, it's so difficult and stuff like that. I think that this game is really hard, but it's not like unfair. Like, you know what you have to do, but if you mess it up, that's kind of on you. And it's like, okay, well, like I know that I have to execute this way, it's just hard to do. So that way when you are able to accomplish that, it feels really freaking awesome, and you're just like,
Yep.
yeah, like this is very, very rewarding. So I think that like it was certainly very hard, which was nice, because like my gameplay right now, or my game where I got 100% says it's like 10 and a half hours, and that's probably closer to 15 with all the times that I spent dying.
Yeah.
But so it was good for replay value, but I just feel like it was also like such a great way to like make it empower the player when they finally did get it.
Oh yeah, definitely. This game never feels like it's like cheating on you, you know? Like it's not like trying to make it super cheap. But it is challenging. It is very hard. You are going to die a lot. But and I honestly, I think the only time where I was like, oh, screw this game is where it forces you to fight the blue EMMI when you don't have the gravity suit yet. And that's probably the only time where I was like, okay, like screw this game. Other than that, the challenge is so satisfying. It really forces you to get good. And like, yeah, it's also a game where even if you know what to do, it's still hard. You still got to execute. And I love that. Yeah, Fusion I don't think is really hard. Once you know what you're doing, it's kind of easy. The enemies, like the bosses, are not very difficult at all. This game, the enemies are difficult. The bosses are difficult. And yeah, you have that awesome enemy diversity. Like I tweeted this out a couple days ago. There was a point in the game where I felt like every new enemy, like area, and even like room I walked into had like a completely different enemy I'd never seen before. I was like, whoa, like this is cool. Oh, this is neat. This is sick. And all these different kinds of enemy types. Really like complete 180 from Samus Returns, where it felt like there were a couple enemies that were copy and pasted. In this game, they were like came up with as much unique enemies as they could. It seemed like there's so many different enemies that were really cool. There's one particular enemy that, if you remember from Metroid Prime, those little like parasite insects that would crawl around on the walls. Kind of in like big groups. There's an enemy in this game that kind of like spews out those things, and like they kind of fly around like similar.
Oh yeah,
I love that enemy was really cool. There's like one that fires like a laser from the ceiling, like insects that fire projectiles from all different directions. And then like when the X get loose and they start corrupting and making like X copies of enemies, and you get like the classic kind of, you know, X variation of an enemy. That was really cool. There's like, again, this is one of those things about this game where I don't remember the name of stuff. So like, I don't remember the enemy names, but there's like that one, like one of the early enemies that they show off, the one that kind of rears up and you know, shows its end and kind of like slams down on you, the crab looking one. And towards the end of like the X, like there's like a corrupted version of it, and it's not just like, you know, a different color. It like has a completely different body type, and it looks sick. And like, yes, this is awesome. Like they really went above and beyond to come up with new bosses, new enemy types, new ways for those enemies to attack you, and not just like the expected patterns from Metroid enemies. Like they really came up with some awesome stuff. So plus you do also have enemies that are pretty similar to classic designs from Metroid enemies and Metroid games in the past. So yeah, this game like goes all out on the cool enemies to fight, and they look awesome.
But yeah, they do, and it's like super, super satisfying to counter, especially some of the big enemies that just like blast them away right away. But yeah, this I really love the enemy diversity, and like I was in for the difficulty. I really did appreciate that, and because like you said, it's not cheap. It's not like you damage a boss and like halfway through just like fills up his tank or whatever like that again, and those when that happens, that feels like just incredibly cheap. It kind of leaves a bad taste in your mouth. Whereas like the games that they lay out what you need to do, and it's up to you to execute it. You just need to be fine-tuned and have precision. I'm all about difficulty like that with those games, and I think that like with the bosses in particular, like the patterns that they show, we were talking about it with Corpius, but like a lot of the patterns are pretty like avoidable, or once you study the boss, you really do learn how to defeat him. So I really liked the difficulty, but I will say that for everybody complaining about the difficulty, I think that's totally legit, because this game is hard.
It is hard. I think the thing is that as like I mean I even went into this game expecting like, okay, I'll be able to beat it in a night, and I couldn't. I think maybe just some people might be able they might be going into this thinking, okay, it's a Metroid game. How hard could it really be? And this is 100% harder than any Metroid game I've played. So like even as a Metroid fan, it was surprisingly hard. So I can understand people coming into this and be like, wow, this is way harder than I expected. It's much more of a challenge. And people kind of want like that quick, gratification, right? Where they play the game and they feel like they're good immediately, and, they want to beat it as quick as they can. And this is not one of those games. It's certainly a game that's challenging and might require, a couple sessions, which is, I think, awesome. I'm glad it didn't take me one session to beat, or even two. It's probably going to take, the third for me to do this. And I'm not even 100% in the game. So I love the challenge. I'm glad it's not easy. Like you said, I mean, Metroid Fusion is my favorite 2D Metroid, but I think it's not a hard game at all. It's especially when you know what you're doing. But even when you don't know what you're doing, it's not very hard. This game, like some enemies are they hit like a truck, and they are relentless, and they are on you, and they are quick, and they are fast, and they take a lot. And even if they don't have high health, it's hard to deliver damage consistently. So it feels like they have high health. So it's a game that requires you to, have your execution up, which I think is great. I'm happy to have a challenge. It makes it more rewarding when you finally overcome the challenge, and it makes me want to go back, because when I was playing this game, I'm like, dude, this is hard just for a regular playthrough. On a speed run, like I can't imagine like to do all of this perfectly and not die and all. Like I can't wait to give that a try for myself, and I can't wait to see other people who are way better than me pull it off, because it's going to be incredible to watch the skill that's going to be required to play this game at a high level. And I can already tell just playing it at a low level on my first try where that's going to go. So I'm really excited. I love that the game has that like replayability, fundamentally by being a challenge, because apparently there's a hard mode for this game. And I'm like, dude, I don't even know if I'm going to be able to survive that. I thought this was the hard mode. Apparently there's
actually like
what the hell? So yeah, I love that it's a challenge. And you know what? Maybe it's a bit over-tuned in some areas. Maybe they'll patch it. I doubt they will. I don't think they should. I don't think they will. I don't think they should. I think it's in a really good spot, and I'm glad it's a game where people are going to be like, all right, I really got to get into this and really learn and get good and get better at it to advance. Right? I don't think that's a bad thing at all.
I don't either. And you know what? If they did a patch and they were just like, you know what, guys, here's easy mode, I think that would be great.
That's different. Because, yes, if you add an easy mode, like separate from the current difficulty and the hard difficulty, 100%. I'm totally about, accessibility options. If someone wants to play a game in an easy mode, that doesn't, as far as I'm concerned, does not change the experience for anyone who doesn't want to play that. Even for a game that's meant to be challenging, I think it's okay as long as you don't get rid of that challenge for anybody else. If I can still play it at its current challenge, like if at its current difficulty, I'm okay with that. If they patch the game for which this mode was now easier, I would be like, all right, I'm not about that. Add a separate easy mode, then that's totally cool. Because I think part of this game's nature and characters being challenging. So I want that to stay.
Yeah, I agree. I wouldn't be, like I was saying, I wouldn't be opposed definitely to if they wanted to add that easy mode, but I really actually do like that the challenges ramped up in this game because like when I think of Metroid games, I don't necessarily think of them as like typically very challenging. So I do like that that is there. One thing that I want to talk about here, and then we'll get out of here because we're running long, is Mercury Steam themselves. They crafted an absolutely awesome Metroid
Hats
game.
off
Like,
to them.
These guys did just an amazing job. I mean, it's probably time that we start talking about Mercury Steam in like the same kind of breath that we're talking about Retro Studios. And
No.
I think that we're getting close.
I don't
really
agree
do.
with that. I definitely don't agree with that. But they're on the right track. They are 100% on the right track. They're not at Retro's level yet. They're not at the level of other studios, but they are 100% on the right track. Yeah.
I feel like Nintendo has got to invest in this company to like keep them working on Metroid and like maybe if they can make an awesome Metroid game like this, like let's hand them the keys to something else too. We saw what Retro did with Donkey Kong Country and it resurrected that series. So like I really hope that Nintendo maybe goes all in, and I don't think that they can buy Mercury Steam. I think that most of their shares are owned by someone else, but at least have like some kind of investment in that studio to really solidify that relationship. I think Mercury Steam is already working on their next game, which is not for the Switch. It's for PlayStation 5, I want to say. So we're probably not going to see anything from them for a while, but like, man, they created just an absolutely awesome engine. If you copy and pasted this engine and like you just remade Fusion or you made a new 2D Metroid with new areas, like, okay, great, perfect. Like, this is awesome.
Yeah.
So yeah, Mercury Steam really knocked it out of the park. And I really hope that we see more collaborations with Nintendo, not only just on new Metroid stuff, but just on stuff like new games and whatnot. So yeah, hats off to Mercury Steam.
Oh, they did 100% an amazing job, and yeah, that wasn't like a knock or anything earlier. Like I just, I still think there's more time needed, but they killed it with this game. They've done an impeccable job for the size of the studio. They're a really solid team of developers. They are, seemingly great people and really passionate about the games they make and the Metroid series. And I 100% agree. They could easily now just be like, all right, we could remake Super Metroid, we could remake Metroid Fusion with this engine. I'd be totally about that. Like, especially you could tell, like now that we know that they originally wanted to make a Fusion remake, you can totally tell that they were like burning to do that because they like added like the X back into this game as like the exact same mechanic as it was in Fusion. You're like, oh, they were just dying to make a Fusion remake, and they like did what they could with Dread to like almost in a way make it kind of like a Fusion remake in some aspects. So I love that. Hats off to Mercury Steam. If anyone from Mercury Steam listens to this or listens to the show, gotta say, y'all killed it. 10 out of 10. I love what the work y'all do, and I can't wait for the new stuff. And that's part of the reason why I hope Nintendo invests in the company, because I'd love to see them, have more resources, have more people. At the same time, I want them to continue to make whatever games they want to make on whatever platform they want to make. So I hope they continue to have that freedom and autonomy to do so. Overall, love the studio, love the developers, everyone behind it. So, hats off to them. They really did an amazing job, and I hope they continue to make more Metroid games.
Maybe we should give Mercury Steam Star Fox. See if they can make a good Star
They
Fox
should do
game,
Kid
'cause
Icarus.
no one else seems to be able to.
They should do Kid Icarus. I could see them doing a really good Kid Icarus game. Like, both Metroid and Kid Icarus have, like, similar kind of elements to them. It's a series that kind of came back for a bit, but, didn't really super come back, and it's a franchise I think people would appreciate coming back more. I could see them doing something like that, but Star Fox would also be cool.
Yeah, that'd be cool. If it was like a Metroidvania Kid Icarus, because I wasn't really about the Kid Icarus Uprising.
Yeah, that's what I meant. I honestly thought Kid Icarus Uprising was really cool, but yeah, I meant like a Metroidvania Kid Icarus is what I was going for.
Oh yeah. Oh, dude, give me that in my veins. That would be awesome. All right. This is our initial impressions of Dread, so we will obviously have a lot more coming. We're going to do a story dive next week. We're going to do Mapping Metroid for Arteria. We got discussion on the music. We got discussion on the bosses. We got so much to talk about. We'll update you on how the game is performing sales-wise. I think it's on track to obviously be the best-selling Metroid as of right now from everything that we've seen. So much to talk about here. Again, if you want to get you some Dread, head on over to Omega Metroid Pod on Twitter and literally just retweet and follow the podcast over on Twitter. Anything you want to say before we get out of here, Dak?
I don't know, man. I'm excited to jump into the game again right after this and go and play. I'm super excited. I cannot wait. The game is awesome, and I'm happy Metroid's back, man. It's definitely back.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. This game is awesome. We just can't say it enough. It really is. You're gonna hear us critique things here or there, but like, god damn, this game is awesome. So if you have not, I can't imagine anybody listening to this hasn't played Dread. But if you haven't, go get Dread. Buy your friends Dread for Christmas or Thanksgiving or their birthdays or whatever. Let's get this game out in the wild. Until next week, everybody, we are at Omega Metroid Pod on Twitter. I am at Spiteri316 and Dak is at DakCity_. And of course, we want you to check out the podcast on Spotify, iTunes, wherever you get your pods. Like and subscribe. Tell that new Metroid fan in your life, if Metroid Dread is their first game and they want to take their love of this series to the next level, tell them where they can get their weekly Metroid fix, Omega Metroid Podcast. Until next week, everybody, we will see you then.